Welcome back, or should I say in German, if I'm capable to, willkommen, to 14 years later with Jeffrey. And today I spell Jeffrey with a G in case anyone is wondering. So Geo, and then, the rest of Jeffrey instead of with a J. Yeah, so I mentioned this, but the reason is because I took the name I have, Jeffrey, from an Englishman writer whose name is Geoffrey Chaucer from many centuries earlier. I haven't read his I guess most famous work or any of his works. I just like the quotation by him, but I guess his most famous work is the Canterbury Tales. So which I intend to read. I intend to buy the book and read the book and get to know him to a higher extent. But yeah, very, very interested in this particular writer and this particular name. But so, Jeffrey begins with a G in the spelling I'm using. So today I thought I would delve higher into genocide. Okay, sort of out of left field introduction, but earlier than I do this, so my clothes aren't affiliated with the University of Texas, but when I was graduating from high school, actually I was like a huge fan of the University of Southern California, which later I was in attendance a couple of academic years at the law school, the Gould School of Law. But this is like a decade after I was in high school. But so I was a really big fan of USC, and the University of Texas beat in football, American football, in case you're viewing from like a nation where they call soccer football, which is, I guess, higher factually accurate. But so the University of Texas with the quarterback Vince Young defeated and won against USC, and I was so angry because I was a really big fan of running back Reggie Bush. I really liked the way he was capable to run, and they had a really great quarterback. The Trojans, the USC Trojans, had a really great quarterback, Matt Leinart. But anyways, so I sort of feel like I'm like in the colors of the University of Texas. This isn't burnt orange. This isn't an accurate color of orange. It's just a polo shirt. But I have on white shorts also. So let me step back and show you and do like a spin for you so you can see. If you can see, yes. So I feel like I'm like a fat old white guy who he's like a University of Texas supporter. I guess you couldn't see too well. I should have like zoomed in on how I look, but so yes, so the team which defeated and destroyed in terms of especially defense against Reggie Bush, and one was the University of Texas, and I will never forget. I guess I will never forget having lost, I could say. But yeah, I've never been affiliated with the University of Texas, but I've been to the city of Austin, and despite many things, I think the city of Austin is beautiful. It's a very gorgeous, attractive city, and the University of Texas seems like a cool institution to be involved with. But I haven't been in Austin. I don't think I stayed very long ever in Boston. Not Boston, oh my God. Austin, not Boston. In Austin, Texas. But I've been, I think multiple different instances. So anyways, getting back to the point, instead of being off topic, I wanted to talk about genocide. I am a graduate of the University of California at Los Angeles, UCLA, and I have a Bachelor of Arts in History and a minor in Political Science. It was supposed to be a double major, History and Political Science, but I was taking out loans to go to school, and the money started adding up too much. So I decided to graduate a quarter early, and I didn't use so we had the quarter system at UCLA, and I entered as a freshman. By the way, I wasn't like a transfer student. So we had like a financial crisis going on in the USA and I guess the world, like a great recession happening. And I just decided they were like hiking the cost of tuition. So I decided to just not have that additional quarter, which is sort of like a semester, and take the final courses I needed to graduate as a double major with political science and history. So I just have the history major and the political science minor, but I have my bachelor's diploma. I can show, should I show this? I'll pause and I'll show this. Give me a moment. Okay, so I'm back. So I have the Bachelor of Arts. I can't show you the whole thing because I don't want to show my actual name. I'll stay in character, but University of California, you know, from the regions of the University of California on, yeah, and you can see the day, I guess, the date I graduated. Oh no, it's from the college. Okay, but I'll show you the rest of the diploma from my bachelor's degree. Why do I bring up the University of California at Los Angeles so much of the bachelor's degree? I went to like law school, but I don't have any degree besides a high school diploma, like, you know, at the rate of like an adult, sort of like around the age of 18. So I have a high school diploma, and I have completed also a Bachelor of Arts, and I have some, I guess you could say, graduate school or like professional school, which is law school. And I was gonna return for a second Bachelor of Arts, a post-baccalaureate, and, you know, begin Chinese studies. And I was thinking like, you know, things like computer science, you know, do a dual degree. But unfortunately, I'm not able to. I am unable to do this at the moment. But so I took a course, an honors college course at UCLA because I graduated with, I'll show you in a moment, I graduated summa cum laude and with college honors, which are two separate realities, or two separate realities, okay. Two separate distinctions. The first, summa cum laude, has to do with GPA, and college honors has to do with like a separate like counseling unit or like college which you are involved with, which you have to take, or at earlier when I was at UCLA, you had to take additional courses, honors courses, to graduate with the college honors distinction. But anyways, let me show you this. But so I took an honors course in history on genocide, like comparative genocide. And I wanted to discuss some things that I think were correct and some things which I think were incorrect, and specifically three what I am calling genocides, which have happened, you know, like earlier than I was alive, and I'm able to discuss at the moment, not like in like prediction of like what has happened or like, you know, during while I was alive, but so three specific genocides which I think are like undisputably the higher physically in terms of like percentage of a group being murdered in warfare or combat or by means of essentially illegality. But anyways, so and then some which individuals claim are genocides, which I could possibly agree or disagree depending on certain definitions, but definitely which I do not believe are comparable to the three which I find to be disproportionately the higher percentage. And very unfortunately, you know, I don't want to get like emotional on camera. I get like sort of emotional and teary-eyed at different instances, but yes, three specific major genocides have happened at the very least. Anyways, so yes, so same bachelor's degree, but I'll cover my name if I can. Oh, I'm getting so bad at this. Okay, so it's bachelor. I'm not sure if you can see the Bachelor of Arts with a major in history, with a minor in political science, blah 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 blah. But at the bottom you see summa cum laude and college honors. So yes, I assume I was like a very high, like an extremely high ranked graduate with the bachelor's degree. Obviously, not. I'm not saying I was like. I am no at this point saying I was like a PhD, but I was even at the level. I had a professor who allowed me to study in two master's courses while I was in two political science master's courses while I was at UCLA in the bachelor's degree. So yeah, I just wanted to finally show you all my University of California at Los Angeles bachelor's degree. Yes, so you've seen this, but you haven't seen my name because my character is Jeffrey, though extremely closely, in some instances loosely, but closely based on who I actually am. And I believe I've said I intend to make 4,000 videos long form on this channel and with this character, and develop the character, and then possibly move on from there. But give me a moment to put my things back, because I have my like high school diploma, my UCLA diploma, and like my admissions letters on a chair across the living room, and I just want to put those back, so I'll be right back. All right, sort of funny story. Not to, I don't want to be like funny or like humorous, even though I usually am not too humorous. But sort of funny story about, like, before I go on to the topic. Actually, when I graduated early, my mother was overseas, if I remember correctly, because her brother, my uncle, had passed away in his 50s, actually, so really early. But he had passed away, and this isn't funny because of my uncle passing away, but and my mother was overseas, and I had returned home from Los Angeles, and because I don't live in Los Angeles, so at the moment, so I had returned home from Los Angeles, and my mother was like, what are you doing home? Because she was talking to me, and I had returned to where my dad is, where my dad's home is, my dad's house, and my mother's house. And she was like, what are you doing? This and that. And I was like, I graduated early. You should be really happy and everything. And she was like freaking out at me because she was convinced I hadn't graduated and I had dropped out of like university, and I hadn't gotten my degree completed, my Bachelor of Arts completed. Because then I was planning to go to law school, and I was planning to take the LSAT, which I did. And in case anyone's curious, so it's a little low of a score, but on the LSAT, in case you're curious, and this is when for those of you who understand the LSAT or have taken the LSAT, this is when the like logic games were on the LSAT, because I believe they changed the LSAT this past year or so, I think in like 2025, but I got a 176 on the LSAT, and I was like, let's just say like a sort of almost perfect GPA at UCLA. So I was able to get into Harvard Law School as the first law school I went to, and then blah, 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 blah. Anyways, so yeah, it's sort of funny. My mother thought I had dropped out of UCLA and I hadn't graduated. And she was like freaking out. And for whatever reason, I was like, I don't want to pay. I think it was like $5 or $10 to get the the diploma, the physical Bachelor of Arts diploma delivered, or like mailed to you, not delivered, mailed to you, and then mailed to me. And then I was like saying, no, it's not a big deal, who cares? Like the Bachelor of Arts was like nothing. And she was like, why do you not, when she got back to the US, she was like, why don't you want to pay the $5 or $10? You haven't graduated, you're lying to me. And my father kept trying to tell her, no, he graduated, he's done, he finished. I drove to Los Angeles and I picked him up, and we drove home together. We drove to the house together. But she didn't believe me until I actually physically purchased the diploma I just showed you. I didn't hang up on any wall or anything, because I intended way earlier to have like a Juris Doctor from Harvard Law School. And I had since my first year, my freshman year at UCLA, an individual had said, you could go to Harvard Law School, and then it went into my mind. And I just kept going with this. So like 4 years after I had, not 14 years later, but like 4 years after, I had a diploma, which I didn't think was like a big deal but now it's like sort of like a nice memory. And it's true, like as a fact, post high school, my high school diploma, I only have a single degree I've completed. Okay, so this is actually a fact. But anyways, so getting on to genocide. If I remember correctly, in the genocide class, the comparative genocide history course, the honors course I took, we discussed, if I remember correctly, the Armenian genocide, we discussed the Holocaust, we discussed the genocide in Rwanda between the Hutu and the Tutsi, and we discussed Darfur, which there's, at the moment, if I understand correctly, I didn't continue to study the issue, but there's a nation now named South Sudan, which, if I remember correctly, there was no South Sudan when I was in university. And the genocide was sort of a different scenario, because when a group or like a population have a nation, they, in my opinion, have recourse to certain things, as compared to being sort of overrun by like national actors. Like, say for instance, like, so how are the Jews going to fight as a group who didn't control a nation? Okay, so there's the Weimar Republic, whatever, in Germany, but when Adolf Hitler's in power and the Nazis are in power, the Nazis control, Adolf Hitler controls a nation, or like, you could say like an empire, like an evil empire. Anyways, and the Jews didn't. There are certain cases where having a nation state, I guess, limits the percentage of your population which can be killed. This seems to be the case. This is just an idea I have. But anyways, so discussing the three, so two of the three, because I think the history course I took was limited to, I guess the time frame was from approximately the early 1900s onward. Wait, I'm missing like a genocide or like ethnic cleansing, which we studied. There's something I'm missing. Okay, I'm getting distracted because there's like a car alarm outside. Somebody's, I guess, trying to steal a car. So anyways, there's got to be like a huge genocide I'm missing in my mind from the course which I took. Anyways, so I am going to talk today about the three highest, or tonight, because I'm filming overnight and I'm turning nocturnal, the three highest genocides as far as I can view in, let's say, since there has been like the camera, you know, since there have been photographs and since there is photography. And I think I'm factually correct because I think the three, in terms of percentage of a population lost, the three highest genocides to me, not in order exactly of their like importance or any type of like what I would say the unbiased order, because it's not in order. The three are the Holocaust, the genocide of the Aborigines of Australia, and the genocide of the Amerindians, the Native Americans of essentially the USA, let's say. Okay, and I am of the USA. I was born in the USA, and you know, so I'm a citizenship by I have citizenship by birth, and you know, I'm increasingly happy with, very unhappy with much of the politics in the USA, and I'm a Republican. I was a Democrat until my late 20s. You know, I was sort of born into like a Democrat family, and then I became a Republican in my late 20s for various reasons. A reason is because Jared Kushner is like a Jewish guy. He's Middle Eastern, if I understand, ancestrally Middle Eastern. I'm not talking about where he was born, but he's a Jewish guy, and he was like very close to Donald Trump. So that's a reason I was like extremely interested in the Republican Party, because there seemed to be an opportunity, whereas with the Democrats have gone towards being disproportionately in favor of black populations, which are called African Americans, I guess, in the government sense, but I've been told the preference is to be called black. So yeah, so I'm a Republican, and why do I bring this up? Because there is an enormous genocide. Oh, and I should say about being a Republican. So Republican Abraham Lincoln. So when I believe when he was a Republican, because I believe he was in a different political party earlier, but Republican Abraham Lincoln led with his actual, in a sense, martyrdom, led the abolition of slavery, of the black humans of the USA, in the highest death toll to Americans war in US history, which is the American Civil War. So the Republican Party. I believe I mentioned this in a different video, but I forget. So anyways, so despite this, the Native Americans, I don't believe they're called Amerindians when they're of the USA, but the Native Americans have, I have to speak out, I believe Marlon Brando, the actor who I believe passed away already, one of my favorite actors, a single individual of my favorite actors, though I really like Al Pacino also, and I guess I like Adam Sandler, just to mention a third actor, but yeah, so anyways, Marlon Brando had spoken out against this issue also. But what makes me bring up all this? I am of the USA, but I believe it's unforgiven what happened to the Native Americans, and it's still happening in a sense. Sorry to bring up an issue like this at the moment, but so the Aborigines of Australia, and if I'm getting any of the terms incorrect, I apologize. I have limited knowledge and education as to these specific, or like those specific facts. And of course, the Jews in the Holocaust, specifically in the Holocaust, several instances with the Jews being victims of genocide, but specifically with the Holocaust in, I guess the Holocaust is limited to the 1940s, if I understand, but the many of the issues leading to the Holocaust, or like the persecution, began earlier, at least in the 1930s. When wasn't there persecution? But I need to understand more in detail also about the Holocaust. But so those other genocides, another of the genocides I mentioned, for instance, the Armenian genocide, or like the genocide in Rwanda, or the genocide in Darfur, pale in comparison to the three I'm mentioning, okay? So what makes me say those genocides? So two of the three genocides, the genocides of the Aborigines and the genocides of the Native Americans of the United States, so the Aborigines in Australia and the Native Americans, the Amerindian of the United States, those two groups, I don't want to be, like, I'm not trying to be mean or like inconsiderate or impolite. And again, I don't want like tears to come to my eyes, but those groups have not recovered. We're talking, if I understand correctly from things I've heard or like read, I guess, we're talking about like tens of millions need to have been alive at the moment. And we're talking about like there are like enough Iranians in the state of California, or like parents were Iranian in the state of California to rival, in a sense, the Native Americans of the U.S. population. And I should have Googled ahead of time the population, and the Aborigines of Australia, but in a sense of the word rival, because I'm guessing there aren't too many higher. If I have to Google this, but I doubt we're talking above, if just off the top of my head, above 4 million population for either of the two. And we're discussing. Actually, let me Google this before I go on, so I have the exact numbers. Okay, so I just Googled 3 statistics, and I had Googled a 4th statistic about the Jews earlier. And I guess my numbers were off from a claim I made. My apologies. I guess according to Google, there are nearly 400,000, or like between 300 and 400,000 Iranian descended individuals in California, in the state of California. I was under the impression there were like a million, way off, and likely obviously so. So I've been to California, so there aren't like too many Iranians, but only between like 300,000 to 400,000. And there are actually, I guess in Australia, approximately just under a million Aboriginal individuals. So 3 times as many as, though this is still shocking to me. Just think about this. There are only 3 times as many Aboriginal in the entire nation of Australia, and I'm assuming there should be like 20, 30 million or something of the sort. As there are only 3 times as many, less than 3 times as many, okay, like let's say 3 times as many as Iranians solely in the state of California, not the entire United States, or like Iranians in the United States. So if I picked a different group, like there are possibly like as many like Koreans, or like closer number of Koreans and Korean descendant individuals in the state of California to like Aboriginal. And I was way off with the number of Native Americans and Native Alaskans. There was a distinction. I didn't read in too much detail, but there was like Native Americans and Native Alaskans, Alaska is, there was a distinction on Google in what Google wrote. So I think there were 7.7 million, which is still low. We're talking, there should be what, like 60 million or so at the very least, Native Americans. But 7.7 million is definitely higher, robust, and I'm really glad, because I was thinking like under 4 million. Like I was thinking closer to like 2 million in my mind. And I was way off. But so, yes, but it's still like within a multiple of how many Iranians there are. And the Iranians are not like too populous on the earth, is my point. It's like, it's just insane how few Amerindians and Aboriginal individuals are still like alive. I'm sorry how I talk about this. I hope I seem sensitive to the reality of what I'm discussing, because this is my intention. But we're talking about populations who would, as technology started to grow, and history started to add up and everything, we're talking about populations which I would assume would be in the tens of millions easily, well into the tens of millions, and at the moment are very limited. So this is compared to, like, for instance, the Armenian genocide. Okay, there was like a relocation, there was a genocide, let's say. I'm not an expert on genocide to the extent to be able to say, but I would imagine there's a genocide, or there's like a relocation during World War I, which is too hard, too hard of like walking and moving, and too much stress. But different than, like, there still are, like, there weren't, I have to find out how many Armenians actually died in the Armenian genocide, but it's not like, for instance, with the Jews, like, if I read correctly on Google, 9 million Jews were living in Europe when the Holocaust began, and 6 million were killed by Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, so like 60%. I am willing to bet the house, the Armenian genocide, the Rwandan genocide, the genocide in Darfur isn't 60%, or like 66%, sorry, like 66.6666%, like 2/3, okay? The Armenians are going to be like, well, there are like only millions of Armenians, like a single-digit number of millions of Armenians. The Armenians were never too populous. All won't have been very populous to begin with, but the Jews were populous. America is a very large nation. USA is a very large nation, and we're talking about many different groups of Native Americans. I'll just say Native Americans. And they're limited to like 7.7 million across this like continent of a nation, which is the USA, which spans from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean, and spans like from like disproportionately closer to the equator, not super close, but like disproportionately closer to the equator in like Florida and Texas, for instance, and then like way north, like up north to like Alaska, like, you know, we're talking like the Arctic Circle approximately. Not exactly, just, you know, to give you a sort of dramatization, but yes, hate to use this word, but wiped out. Like, and with the Jews, you know, by the grace of God, they're God's chosen people. So God has allowed them to repopulate. But if I read correctly, based on what I saw on Google, I guess there are as many Jews now as there were in the 1930s. So if I have the numbers correct, I'm really sorry, I haven't done enough research, but we're talking 15 million Jews at the moment, approximately 15 or 16 million, and then this is the same number as there were on Earth, according to Google, if I saw correctly. I'm not talking about limited to Europe, but approximately the same number were alive in the 1930s. I hope I don't have this number wrong. I really thought, which shocked me, I didn't realize there were like 15 million Jews in the 1930s. But yes, so these three genocides took like a different form, but they're disproportionately European begun genocides. So the genocides of the Native Americans of the USA overwhelmingly will have been sort of like Englishman population, like you know, the Americans, like the white Americans, and the genocide of the Aboriginal, if I understand correctly, is like, I have to understand the history of Australia, but we're talking about essentially the British Isles, also the United Kingdom. I hear there are many Irish Australians, not really sure, but so, and then the genocide of the Jews is from close to, disproportionately close to where England is, essentially where the United Kingdom is, because the genocide took place based on, you know, an Austrian leader in Adolf Hitler, but like Austria, Germany disproportionately, and I guess like Italy was involved to an extent, but not as heavily as the, you know, German side, the way we understand things. And the actually, I've discussed in a different video, if I remember correctly, the Englishman is essentially descended from, like Anglo-Saxons are from, if I remember correctly, we're talking like northwestern Germany and possibly Denmark. I have to get the facts straight. But so yes, so we're basically discussing, you know, the Celtic individuals are likely like mixed into what is Englishman in the United Kingdom at the moment, but we're talking essentially the same population relative to like Germany, Englishman sort of thing. I guess Denmark, I'm not sure. And it's those individuals who thousands of years later, in the 1900s, not the 1900s, sorry, after the like 1600s to like earlier than the year 2000, those individuals and those groups are, all won't have been involved, don't get me wrong, it's not all. And you know, Englishman, for instance, was very pivotal to constantly trying to get the USA involved in World War II to end the Holocaust earlier. The Jews will have been a very important factor in Englishman in the United Kingdom, wanting, you know, Winston Churchill, for instance, wanting the United States involved to end the Holocaust earlier than it could like take hold, but like also when the Holocaust began. But yes, so very shocking reality. Let's say Germany, UK, Austria are, and I guess Italy, because you know the Romans and what happened with Jesus Christ. If you point to 4 nations at the moment, which are as a percentage when the genocide associated with them in recent centuries is pointed out, those four nations will have, and disproportionately like closer to like Englishmen and Germany, but those four nations have done the higher percentage and most atrocious forms of genocide we have in recent generations, in recent centuries. And I'm not really sure about what happened in the past, but yes. So when they bring up like the Jews, for instance, and it said the Jews and Amalek and like this and that, sorry, but the Jews haven't been guilty of like an extreme form of genocide compared to what happened in the Holocaust and what happened in with the Native Americans of the USA, and then with the Aboriginal of Australia. So just wanted to point this out, and yeah, I will in the future continue the research and get a better idea, and I'm not sure when, but I'll discuss in higher detail eventually. But this is really important. This is because this is factually true. Thank you very much. Bye. Okay, so sorry. I wanted to keep this unedited as much as possible. My sincerest apologies. I checked on Google as I was like packing up my things to get ready to put together the video and do the editing, like putting together, not editing things out, but put together the video. I checked on the Armenians in the Armenian genocide. My apologies, and apologies to anyone involved in anything in terms of the genocide in Darfur or Rwanda, and anything else I may have mentioned, which I took lightly. I wanted to talk about percentages, which was my point, even though that wasn't clear to me, I guess, at the beginning. And I guess if I read correctly on Google, so this is the fourth. I was talking about three. This is the fourth. The Armenians were as populous in, I guess, the Ottoman Empire as about 2 million when World War I began, if I remember correctly, and the word perished was used, but 1.5 million perished, and there were about 400 something thousand, I guess, still like afterwards. So I guess let's just say like 75%, which is what do I even say? 75% were I guess murdered or like died as a result of what was happening. So yeah, my head is spinning, and I don't want to edit the video too much, edit out the mistakes I made. I want to keep the mistake in the video, which I made. But I guess when dealing with genocide, when dealing with genocide, I should become more educated and should have gotten the law degree and understood better how to use the legal aspect. But I wanted to keep these videos like without having done the research, and sort of not entirely without having done the research, but with having earlier tried to use my like understanding of things, and then like after continuing to do research and to learn and to memorize. But so yeah, what do I even say? 75% or so of the population of the Armenians were genocided, I guess. But I have to be careful with what I say because of traveling issues. Though, what can I say? I hope those types of genocides don't ever happen again. When we look at Donald Trump mentioning a civilization will die if an agreement isn't made in the war with Israel and the U.S. versus Iran, these things are very devastating, I think. Anyways, just wanted to conclude those 4 genocides. My head is spinning now because I didn't realize what I was exactly discussing. But still, no Aryan, yes, nis, nis. Take care. Bye-bye.